She told me, I'll wear what I want, text who I want, and go out with whoever I want. If you don't like it, leave. So I nodded, packed my bag, and left before she even finished getting ready. When she came stumbling in at sunrise, she finally noticed the empty closet and the message I left on her pillow. You got what you asked for. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The last thing Amber ever said to me wasn't, I love you, or I'm sorry. It was a declaration of war disguised as a statement of independence. It was a Thursday night in our Scottsdale apartment, the one we'd been splitting the $2,800 monthly rent on for 2.5 years. The same apartment where we'd talked about engagement rings just 6 months earlier, planning a future that now felt like someone else's architectural blueprint, carefully drawn, meticulously planned, and ultimately discarded. I was sitting on the edge of our king-sized bed, the one we'd bought together at Ashley Furniture after my promotion to senior project manager at Desert Vista Construction. My hands dangled between my knees as I watched her prepare for another girls' night that would end with a 2:30 a.m. stumble through our front door, reeking of craft cocktails and cologne that wasn't mine. The desert heat had finally broken with sunset, but our bedroom still held the day's warmth, thick with the sharp scent of her Tom Ford perfume, Black Orchid, something I'd bought her last Christmas when I still believed we were building something permanent together. She stood before the full-length mirror in a black dress that wasn't meant for casual drinks with Tiffany and her crew from the medical spa. This was the kind of dress you wear when you want to be seen, when you want to send a very specific message to a very specific audience. The fabric clung to every curve like liquid shadow, and I recognized it immediately. Our anniversary dress, the one she'd worn when we celebrated 3 years together at Kai Restaurant, when she'd whispered that it was for very special occasions only. For weeks, I'd been cataloging the warning signs with the same methodical attention I brought to structural assessments at work sites. The secretive texts that made her smile with a satisfaction I no longer inspired, her phone angled away from me like classified documents. The late nights that became later, each excuse more elaborate than the last. The way she'd mention Brad from CrossFit Phoenix with calculated casualness, dropping his name into conversations about weekend plans and workout routines, with the precision of someone laying foundation stones. As someone who spent his days ensuring buildings didn't collapse under their own weight, I'd learned to recognize stress fractures before they became catastrophic failures. The same instincts that kept 40-story structures standing were screaming. A warning's at me now, but love makes you ignore engineering principles. Love makes you pretend the foundation isn't shifting beneath your feet. I'd tried addressing the growing distance the week before, approaching the conversation like I would a difficult client meeting, prepared, diplomatic, solution-oriented. We'd been sitting at our breakfast bar, the morning light streaming through our west-facing windows, highlighting the stress lines that hadn't been there 6 months ago. You seem distant lately, Amber. Is everything okay with us? Her sigh was long-suffering, the kind reserved for persistent sales calls and unexpected overtime requests. God, not this again, Callan. I'm just living my life. Do I need to file a daily activity report with you? The casual dismissal hit like a failed foundation inspection. Everything looked fine on the surface, but the underlying structure was compromised. So, I'd swallowed my concerns, like I always did, filed them away in the same mental compartment where I stored unfinished project reviews and safety protocols that should have been implemented months ago. But tonight, watching her apply blood-red lipstick with the precision of a craftsman preparing for an evening that deliberately excluded me, something fundamental shifted in my chest. Not anger. Anger would have been manageable, something I could channel into productive conversation. This was colder, more final, like watching a controlled demolition from the inside, knowing you're standing in the blast zone. The heat radiating through our bedroom windows carried the scent of desert sage and chlorinated pool water from the complex courtyard below. Phoenix in late summer was unforgiving, temperatures that climbed past 115 degrees during the day, the kind of heat that tested everything from concrete expansion joints to human patience. I'd spent the morning on a job site in Ahwatukee, overseeing the steel frame installation for a new medical complex, my crew starting at 5 a.m. to beat the brutal afternoon sun. By noon, we'd all been drenched in sweat, but the work was precise, measured. each beam placed exactly where the blueprint specified. Precision mattered in construction. Measurements had to be exact, tolerances calculated to the millimeter, because a single miscalculation could bring down everything you'd built. The same principle applied to relationships, I'd thought. Clear communication, solid foundations, honest assessments of structural integrity. I was learning that some people preferred demolition to renovation. "Amber," I said, my voice unnervingly steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through my system. "Where exactly are you going tonight?" She met my eyes in the mirror, her gaze cool and appraising, like a contractor evaluating whether a project was worth the bid. "Out with the girls. I already told you this morning. You're wearing our anniversary dress. It's my dress." The dismissal came with a flick of her wrist, casual, as swatting away a desert fly. "I'll wear what I want." The casualness of it landed like a hammer blow to reinforced concrete. This was the dress she'd worn when we'd talked about moving in together, when she'd said our relationship deserved to be celebrated with something special, the dress that had marked every milestone in our 4-year history, birthdays, promotions, that weekend in Sedona when we'd hiked Cathedral Rock and she'd said she could see us growing old together in Arizona. Apparently, random Thursday nights now qualified as special occasions. Or maybe the occasions had nothing to do with me anymore. I took a breath, the last breath of a man still trying to salvage a project that had already been condemned. "And is Brad going to be there tonight?" Her hands stilled on the vanity surface. The room went quiet except for the hum of our central air conditioning fighting the residual desert heat. She turned slowly, leaning against the vanity, crossing her arms in a posture that wasn't defensive. It was confrontational, a project supervisor facing a subcontractor who dared to question the blueprints. Her expression held the kind of cold authority I'd seen from difficult clients who believed their money bought them the right to rewrite physics. "What about him?" The question hung in the air like dust from a demolition site. I could feel the ground shifting beneath us, the same sensation I'd experienced last month when we discovered unstable soil conditions during this foundation excavation for the Tempe office complex. You knew the project was compromised, but you had to decide whether to rebuild or abandon the site entirely. I see his name a lot in your conversations. You talk about him constantly. You were texting someone just now and smiling like... I trailed off, the words feeling pathetic even as I spoke them. Like a junior engineer questioning calculations from someone with decades more experience. Her laugh was short, humorless, the sound of rebar snapping under too much pressure. "Oh, here we go. The Spanish Inquisition." She took a step forward, each word precisely calibrated for maximum structural damage. "Let me make this crystal clear for you, Callan." She gestured down the length of her body, the black dress catching the bedroom light like polished obsidian. "I'll wear what I want." She picked up her phone from the vanity, the screen glowing with some unread message, probably from Brad discussing their evening plans. "I'll text who I want." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper that carried the finality of a project cancellation notice. "And I'll go out with whoever I want." The ultimatum hung in the perfumed air like smoke from an electrical fire. Her eyes held mine with the unwavering confidence of someone who'd never had their authority challenged, who'd mistaken my accommodation for weakness and my concern for control. "This is my life," she continued, clearly savoring the performance. "I'm not your property. I don't answer to you." She delivered her final line with a cold, triumphant smile that would have looked at home on a demolition crew supervisor. "So, if you don't like it, you can leave." The words hit me with the clarity of a structural assessment report. Foundation compromised, load-bearing capacity exceeded, immediate evacuation recommended. For months, I'd been treating this as a renovation project, trying to repair what I thought were minor stress fractures. But Amber had been planning a complete teardown all along. All the mixed signals, the defensive reactions, the escalating disrespect, it had been leading to this moment. She'd been constructing this argument for weeks, maybe months, building toward this declaration of independence that would put me back in my place, grateful, compliant, accepting whatever scraps of attention she chose to offer. But her calculations were off. Instead of the desperate negotiation she expected, I felt something else entirely. A profound, almost eerie peace settled over me, like the desert quiet after a monsoon storm. The kind of clarity that comes when a complex engineering problem suddenly reveals its elegant solution. I nodded just once, a slow, definitive acknowledgement of terms received and understood, the same gesture I'd give a contractor after reviewing final specifications. Her triumphant expression faltered for just a microsecond before she doubled down. Good. I'm glad we finally understand each other. But I was already in motion. I stood up from the bed with the same methodical purpose I brought to site inspections, moving with the careful efficiency of someone executing a predetermined plan. I walked past her, close enough to catch another wave of that expensive perfume mixed with the anticipation of her evening, and went to our shared walk-in closet. The closet we had organized together when we moved in, dividing space like property surveyors, establishing boundary lines. Her side was a carefully curated collection of designer pieces, each item hung with museum precision. My side was practical, work shirts pressed and organized by color, weekend clothes, the hiking gear we'd bought for camping trips to Flagstaff that now felt like artifacts from someone else's relationship. I reached to the top shelf and pulled down my old gym duffel bag, the ratty Adidas one she'd always criticized because it didn't match her aesthetic vision of our life together. The bag still smelled faintly of the commercial gym I'd used before we got membership at the upscale fitness center where she'd met Brad. "What are you doing?" Her voice had lost its steel edge, now tinged with something that might have been genuine surprise. I didn't answer. I unzipped the bag and placed it on our bed, the California King we'd selected together at Ashley Furniture, arguing playfully about thread count and mattress firmness like it mattered, like we were building something that would last. Then, I opened my side of the closet and began removing my clothes systematically, not in dramatic armfuls like some movie breakup scene, but item by item with the methodical precision I brought to equipment inventories. My work shirts, the ones I wore to construction sites, pressed every Sunday evening for the week ahead. My weekend jeans, softened by years of Saturday morning hardware store runs and Sunday afternoon barbecues. The hiking boots we'd bought together for that camping trip to Sedona when she'd said the red rocks reminded her of why she loved Arizona. I folded each item neatly before placing it in the bag, the same way I organized project materials for maximum efficiency. I was conducting the orderly shutdown of a failed operation, following proper protocols for site abandonment. "Callan, stop it! You're being completely childish. This isn't funny." Her words bounced off the soundproof wall that had formed around my decision. The only voice I heard was the logical one in my head, running through a mental checklist like a pre-flight inspection. Work clothes, casual clothes, personal items, essential documents. I moved to the bathroom we'd shared for 2.5 years. The counter was cluttered with her beauty products, serums and creams that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, tools for the daily construction of her appearance. My side was sparse: toothbrush, razor, the unscented deodorant she'd tried multiple times to replace with something more sophisticated. Into the bag they went. I came back to my nightstand and collected the biography I was reading about Frank Lloyd Wright, research for a sustainable housing project I'd been developing, the framed photo of my parents from their 40th anniversary celebration at the Arizona Biltmore. I deliberately left the picture of us at Lake Powell from last summer, our faces sunburned and smiling, positioned where she'd see it every night. "You are absolutely unbelievable. Is this some kind of tantrum? Because I'm not changing my plans for the evening." Her words bounced off the soundproof barrier that had crystallized around my decision. The same focused calm I brought to crisis management on construction sites had taken over. When a crane malfunctioned or weather threatened to compromise a pour, emotions became liability. You assessed the situation, executed the contingency plan, and documented everything for the post-incident review. Within 20 minutes, my side of the room was systematically erased. The walk-in closet looked cavernous, with only her designer collection remaining, like a museum display after half the artifacts had been relocated. My nightstand was bare, except for the brass lamp we'd bought at a weekend flea market in Old Town Scottsdale, and that single-framed photo from Lake Powell, positioned where she'd see our smiling faces every night. The duffel bag was full, zipped, final. It contained 4 years of shared life compressed into 60 pounds of personal belongings. Everything. I'd contributed to this failed venture in domestic engineering. She was still standing by the vanity, her arms now dropped to her sides, mouth slightly open, in an expression I'd never seen before. The rehearsed defiance was gone, replaced by something approaching genuine shock. She hadn't moved from her position, still in her victory dress, waiting for Act Two, where I begged, where I fought, where I proved my love by accepting her disrespect like a subcontractor swallowing cost overruns to keep the contract. I slung the duffel bag over my shoulder, feeling the weight of transition. The bag was heavier than expected, but not unmanageable, like carrying specialized equipment to a remote job site. I took one final surveying glance around the room that had been our shared headquarters for 2.5 years, then walked to her nightstand, where she kept a leather-bound notepad for grocery lists and inspirational quotes copied from Instagram. I picked up her expensive cross pen, the one I'd given her for her birthday, engraved with her initials, and wrote 6 words on a clean sheet in my careful engineer's handwriting. I folded the paper once, walked to her side of the bed, and placed it precisely in the center of her silk pillowcase. Then, I turned and walked out of the bedroom that was no longer ours. "Callan, where are you going? Don't you dare walk away from me." Her voice chased me down the hallway, rising from authoritative anger to something approaching panic. The sound bounced off the walls we'd painted together last spring, desert sage, a color she'd chosen because it reminded her of Arizona sunsets. I didn't pause at the photographs lining the hallway. Us at spring training games, hiking Camelback Mountain, the housewarming party where we'd introduced each other as partners, building something permanent. I collected my work laptop from the living room coffee table, the mahogany piece she'd insisted would elevate the space, and my keys from the ceramic bowl by the front door. Behind me, I could hear her heels clicking frantically on the travertine tile we'd selected together, the sound echoing through the apartment like Morse code spelling out desperation. "You'll be back," she shouted, her voice cracking with the strain of maintaining control over a situation that had already slipped beyond her management. "You have nowhere to go. You'll come crawling back by tomorrow, you pathetic." The front door closed behind me with a solid, satisfying click, the sound of a project reaching completion. Not a slam that would suggest emotion or drama, but the firm closure of someone who'd finished the job and was moving to the next assignment. The desert night enveloped me like a familiar blueprint. Phoenix in late August meant temperatures that hovered near 90 degrees even after sunset, the kind of dry heat that pulled moisture from everything it touched. The complex's swimming pool glowed turquoise in the darkness, surrounded by palm trees that looked artificial under the LED landscape lighting. I could smell chlorine mixed with the night-blooming cereus that the landscaping company had planted along the walkways. I loaded the duffel bag into the bed of my Ford F-150, the truck I'd kept despite her suggestions to upgrade to something more professional-looking. The midnight blue paint gleamed under the parking lot lights, and I felt a moment of satisfaction that I'd maintained this piece of independence. Tomorrow, I'd need this truck to move whatever furniture I decided to claim from our shared investment. As I got into the driver's seat, I glanced up at our second-floor window. The light was still on, casting a warm rectangle against the building's stucco exterior. I could see her silhouette standing there, watching, probably trying to process what had just occurred. For months, she'd been testing boundaries like an engineer stress testing materials, applying increasing pressure until something gave way. She'd finally found my breaking point. She just hadn't expected it to manifest as structural failure rather than elastic deformation. I started the truck, the V8 engine rumbling to life with mechanical reliability. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m., early enough that traffic on Scottsdale Road would be manageable, late enough that most business hotels would have availability. I didn't speed away or burn rubber like some teenage drama. I pulled out of the complex with the same deliberate precision I'd used to pack my belongings. In my rearview mirror, that illuminated window grew smaller until it was just another yellow square in the complex's facade, then disappeared entirely as I turned onto the main thoroughfare. The city stretched out before me, in a grid of lights and possibility, every intersection and option I could now choose without consultation or compromise. The silence in the truck cab was profound, not the oppressive quiet of loneliness, but the liberating silence of a job completed, a decision executed, a problem solved. She had given me a choice, clearly articulated and non-negotiable. For the first time in months, I had taken it. I drove north on Scottsdale Road toward the airport corridor, passing familiar landmarks that looked different now. The The restaurant where we'd celebrated my promotion, the furniture stores where we'd shopped for our shared life, the gym where she'd met Brad. They were just buildings now, structures serving their intended purpose without emotional weight or historical significance. 20 minutes of driving with no destination beyond away brought me to the Hampton Inn near Sky Harbor Airport. The hotel sat in a cluster of business lodging designed for travelers in transition, perfect for someone who'd just become exactly that. The building was clean, functional, impersonal, a temporary solution while I figured out the permanent plan. The night desk clerk, a college-age kid with the glazed look of someone working the graveyard shift, processed my credit card without curiosity. "How many nights?" "Just tonight, maybe tomorrow. I'll let you know." He handed me a key card and directions to the elevator. "Checkout is 11 a.m., but we can extend if you need more time." More time. That's exactly what I had now. Time that belonged entirely to me. Time I could spend however I chose without negotiation or explanation. Room 847 smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and climate-controlled neutrality. I dropped the duffel bag on the floor beside the queen-sized bed, the sound absurdly loud in the hermetic quiet. For several minutes, I just stood there listening to the mechanical hum of the mini fridge and the distant whoosh of jets taking off from Sky Harbor, carrying other people toward their own transitions. Then, I got to work with the same systematic approach I'd used for the departure. I silenced my phone, not powered off, just muted, and placed it face down on the desk like a piece of equipment temporarily offline. I took a scalding shower, washing away the last traces of her Tom Ford perfume and the accumulated tension of our shared space. The hotel soap was generic, unscented, functional, exactly what I needed. I put on sweatpants and a University of Arizona t-shirt, clothes that felt genuinely mine in a way nothing had for months. Then I ordered room service, a thoroughly mediocre cheeseburger and fries that I ate at the small desk, while watching muted ESPN highlights. The simple act of eating without commentary, without sighs about calories or table manners, was profoundly grounding. My phone began lighting up around 11 p.m. like a malfunctioning circuit board. Missed call, amber. The screen pulsed and went dark. A minute later, it illuminated again. After the fourth consecutive call, the text messages started arriving in rapid succession. 11:23 p.m. Where are you? This isn't funny anymore. 11:25 p.m. Did you take my black heels? You better not have taken my heels, Callan. 11:31 p.m. Answer your phone. We need to talk about this. You're completely overreacting. 12:47 a.m. Seriously? The silent treatment now? Real mature approach. 15 a.m. I'm home. Where the hell are you? I read each message with the detached curiosity of reviewing incident reports from other project sites. The concern wasn't for me, for us, for what we'd lost. It was for her disrupted evening plans, her missing accessories, the inconvenience my departure had caused to her carefully orchestrated night. The epicenter of her crisis was logistical rather than emotional. The final call came at 2:43 a.m. I imagined her stumbling through our front door, the night's adrenaline replaced by premium vodka and dawning comprehension. She probably saw the note then, that folded piece of paper on her silk pillowcase containing 6 words that would define the conclusion of our 4-year project. You got what you asked for. The call went to voicemail. I didn't listen to it until the following morning. Her voice was thick, distorted by tears and what sounded like expensive wine. "Callan, Jesus, the closet looks so empty. You actually left? After everything we built together? I didn't mean it like that. Come home. We need to discuss this situation. Please just come home. I'm sorry you misunderstood what I was trying to say. You misunderstood. The quintessential non-apology, engineered for maximum impact while accepting minimum responsibility. Not, I was wrong or I hurt you, but you interpreted my clear ultimatum incorrectly. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked her number. The following weeks became a masterclass in administrative efficiency. I leveraged my construction industry connections to find a furnished studio apartment in downtown Phoenix. Nothing luxurious, but it featured floor-to-ceiling windows and belonged entirely to me. The poll with $400 monthly rent fit comfortably within my $75,000 annual salary, leaving room for the hiking and camping gear I'd neglected during our relationship. I submitted notice at our Scottsdale complex, citing dissolution of cohabitation agreement, and paid my portion of the final month's rent to avoid legal complications. Each phone call to utility companies, internet providers, and insurance carriers was a small declaration of independence, removing my name from joint accounts and establishing autonomous credit history. It was systematic euthanasia, dismantling the infrastructure of our shared life item by item, until nothing remained but clean documentation and forwarding addresses. 3 weeks into my reconstructed existence, an unknown number called while I was returning from my morning run through Steele Indian School Park. I'd established a new routine, 5 a.m. runs before the desert heat became punitive, followed by coffee and project reviews for the medical complex we were finishing in Tempe. "Callan, thank God you answered." Tiffany. Her voice carried the theatrical whisper of someone calling from a crime scene. "Tiffany, I know I probably shouldn't be calling, but I'm genuinely worried about both of you. This whole situation is completely insane." "There is no both of us," I said, toweling sweat from my forehead. "Don't be like that. She's a total disaster, Callan. You need to call her immediately." I remained silent, applying the same pressure testing technique I used with difficult contractors. She rushed to fill the void. "That Brad guy turned out to be a complete user, absolute waste of oxygen. He ghosted her after—" Her voice dropped conspiratorially. "After he got what he wanted. She showed up at his apartment and some other woman answered the door. Can you imagine the humiliation?" I could visualize it perfectly. I offered no commentary. "And those friends from that night you left? They've completely abandoned her, called her too dramatic, too needy." Unbelievable, right? Entirely believable. Amber had confused an audience with genuine friendship, mistaking applause for actual loyalty. "She's completely falling apart at work," Tiffany continued, now fully invested in her role as information broker. "Got formally reprimanded last week for missing deadlines, then had a complete emotional breakdown during her performance review. She just sits in that apartment watching sad movies and ordering takeout. It's honestly pathetic. Pathetic." Even her most devoted advocate couldn't avoid the assessment. "She keeps saying she made the biggest mistake of her life, that you were right about everything. She needs you, Callan. You were always the stable foundation. You have to fix this mess." The core assumption revealed itself. Not she loves you or she realizes what she lost, but she needs you to repair the damage. I wasn't a partner to be cherished. I was a service to be restored. "Thanks for the information, Tiffany." "That's it? Just thanks for the information?" "She's suffering here. I appreciate you letting me know. Take care of yourself." I ended the call and immediately blocked the number. 2 months after my departure, Phoenix experienced one of its rare summer rainstorms, the kind that transforms the desert into something temporarily miraculous. I was walking back from my gym, a no-frills facility near my apartment, where nobody knew my relationship history, when I spotted a familiar figure huddled under the narrow awning of a closed coffee shop. Amber stood there soaked through, her hair plastered against her skull, mascara creating dark tributaries down her cheeks. She wore a thin jacket that provided zero protection against the deluge. She looked diminished, like architectural plans that had been revised down to bare minimum specifications. Our eyes met across the rain-slicked pavement, hers widened with desperate recognition. "Callan!" She stumbled toward me through the downpour. I stopped walking but maintained my distance, rain drumming against my umbrella like a countdown timer. "How did you find me? Does it matter? I had to see you." She was shivering violently, arms wrapped around herself. "I lost everything, Callan. Everything. Can we please just go upstairs and talk? I'm freezing." "We can talk here." The rejection of shelter hit her like a structural failure. "I made a mistake," she said, words tumbling out desperately. "A huge mistake. You were right about everything. I'll change. I'll be different. Just give me another chance." I looked at her, really looked, and felt the final absence. Not hatred, not pity, just complete indifference. "Amber," I said, my voice steady as engineering principles. "You told me exactly what you wanted, freedom to do whatever you chose. You gave me explicit instructions. If I didn't like it, leave." I paused, letting the rain fill the silence. "I followed your blueprints exactly. That project is complete." Just then, a cheerful voice called from my building's entrance. "Hey, Callan, brutal weather, right?" Nicole, my neighbor from 4B, stood in the doorway wearing scrubs from her shift at Phoenix Children's Hospital. Her face was bright with the satisfaction of meaningful work completed. I turned toward her, the door between us creating a barrier between past and future. A genuine smile touched my lips for the first time in months. Absolutely brutal. Still on for that Camelback hike Saturday if this clears? Wouldn't miss it. I've been looking forward to it all week. The door sealed shut behind us with mechanical finality. Whatever sounds came from the street, tears, protests, or simply rain against pavement, were muffled into irrelevance. The lobby was warm, clean, quiet. The past remained outside, already washing away in the desert storm. I walked toward the elevators with Nicole, discussing trail conditions and weather forecasts, my future entirely my own. You got what you asked for.